Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a brand new episode of One Vision, the Fintech Views. This is Theo, your host for today's episode. Joining us today in the studio from the other side of the world, actually Singapore to be exact, is Yves Roesti, Managing Partner and CEO of Synpulse Group. Welcome to the show, Yves.
Thank you, Theo. Thanks for having me, and congrats on your channel and podcast.
Thank you. It's been 6 years I'm running. I can't believe how long we've been doing this for. But I know I'm not supposed to pick favorites, but of all the 6 years we've been running the show, the most popular episodes have always been ones that we focus on Asia. And looking at innovation in APAC and what's happening. So I have very high hopes on what we're talking about, and I think it's going to be really exciting and perfect start for the new year. Before we start, though, can you tell us a little bit more about what you do and what is Synpulse Group?
Sure. Yeah, happy to do so. I'm Yves Roesti. I'm Swiss born, as you could tell from my last name, and perfect pronunciation, Theo. I head up the Synpulse as the group CEO. Maybe two words on Synpulse. We are a boutique management consultancy firm in 22 countries. So global reach, right? We have over 1,000 talents working for us as consultants, and we focus on financial services. So that's our differentiation. We do everything from business strategy to implementation. Basically, can help our clients end to end with their problems. Personally, I'm based in Singapore since 18 years, so most of my professional life has been in Asia, and I'm loving it.
I bet. I'm actually very jealous because every time I'm back in Asia, I have so much fun, and there's never a dull moment. I think it's how I would describe it. So let's come back on this side of the world, and I want to do a comparison for a little bit. In the US, there has been a lot of talk, especially in the last 2 years, about using different AI tools for different parts of what we do in our daily lives as well as professional lives. And increasingly, consumers, they're using various tools, for example, generative AI chatbots for financial advice and product discovery. Do you see a similar trend in APAC?
Yeah, so of course, a trend. AI is a trend in the region as well. However, the two markets are fundamentally different, right? If you talk about US, it's very homogeneous. In Asia, Asia is 50 countries, right? So you have 50 subcultures that are distinctly different. And I would say the benefit we have in Asia, if you look at financial services and wealth and how people research, wealth management is growing at a really fast pace over the last 15 years already. And we're talking about growth rates of 10 to 20 or even more percent, right? So Asia will become very dominant with its rising middle class. And with that, of course, automation is key. There's some other peculiarities about APAC that we observe. One is, and I'm sure you're familiar with this, the access to technology and the way to handle it is actually much more prevalent, right? In certain cultures, even they jump technology cycles. In Indonesia, for example, everybody has a cell phone and conducts their business on a cell phone, and hardly anything gets done on laptops or even desktops. So they've just jumped, right? On the other hand, when people leverage AI, I sense that they're much more accepting and trusting a little bit the results and the prompting, versus the Western counterparts are a bit more skeptical. And they call it, where's responsible AI, or having AI guardrails. I think that's a bit less so over here. Yeah? And then maybe on as a last point, how the customer needs are evolving. I would say there are really two categories. One is, on the retail side, with regards to banking and wealth management. Here, the needs are much more standardized for, let's say, portfolio management, right, and advisory. So there, of course, the usage and application of AI is already advancing very fast. For private banking, so the higher end with ultra high net worth clients and family offices, there it is really white gloves, right? And it's very bespoke. The problems are very complex, and there I think AI is used to support, the interaction with the client, but it's not replacing, right? It's still very human.
Well, you touch on a very important point when you think about money. Money is personal, it's emotional, it's something that it evokes a different sentiment, for lack of a better word, and you need the trust in there, and I can see why a lot of things still need that human touch, and AI can't really quote unquote replace what we do. However, being said, I think there are ways that it can help supplement what we do and perhaps make things a little bit easier, more practical side of us doing business, if you will, from a day-to-day perspective. What are some of the things that you see on your side of the ocean where you see institutions being able to do more on that and, perhaps make it into production instead of just piloting? Because I'm seeing a lot of pilots here. There's no lack of pilots, but there is not much when it comes to, oh, now we move beyond this little group pilot and we're actually putting in production and putting it to mass scale to use.
It's a good question, Theo. I mean, first of all, AI, of course, is still every day in the agenda of boards and C-level executives, right? And even for ourselves, right? We have AI first strategy, and I see a lot of executives having to implement innovation through Gen AI. And so some executives also go towards using that as a sort of a cost cutting mandate, which I believe is the wrong approach, right? Rather than empowering your organization first. Um, but you're right. On the department level, we see a lot of use cases being developed and successfully so. And the question is, okay, is it pilot or does it go already into production grade? Obviously, we are in a regulated environment typically, so there's a lot of governance and hoops that have to be cleared before you can roll it out. But I can tell you three areas that are really being disrupted at the moment with Gen AI, and that is reaching the consumer. Number one is call center, right? Call centers. I'm not sure if you remember the time or still there that you have this IVR with you for English press one, for Chinese in Chinese of course press two, and you basically navigate yourself through the menus with the keypad. Nowadays, I think most, if not all, tier one banks have programs to apply natural language processing and augment it with Gen AI, and the results are spectacular. So I think we see this coming through very soon, and some have already, right? The second one is, of course, fraud and risk detection, including also anti-money laundering. I think that was also the birthplace where predictive analytics and pattern matchings were coming from. So that's already quite well established, I would say. And then closer to wealth management, we see the emergence of advisory co-pilot, where meetings are being prepared and in some degree of automation and support that is being provided, as well as when you onboard clients, there's a automated source of wealth corroboration to see, hey, did you really make this money out of your source that you indicate, right? Is this truthful or not? So I think AI can help a lot in this space. So most of that revolves, as you correctly said, around use cases, right? Where what we have yet to see is, sort of the wealth manager that says, hey, how does the future fully agentic AI enabled operating model looks like? Yeah, how does that look like, right? And that's, by the way, an area where we invest a lot of time in Synpulse. The question we ask the team is, how far can we push the envelope in terms of, building um, the future bank in that space, right? With all automated and autonomous agents. How many humans do we need in the loop? How does this architecture look like? What are the skills that you need for those people, right, that are there? What are some of the restrictions you have, etc. So that is that's a key focus of ours to build that.
It it is the I would say some of the crucial questions that you just talked about, right? How does that impact what we do? How far can you push the envelope? And how does the regulatory framework impact or constrain or
Mm-hmm.
perhaps enable what we can do with the technology? There are so many ways that we can take it. Skill set is important, obviously, both from I love what you just said earlier too, cost cutting might not always be the best place to start. We also need to look at how we can actually create value and do more with it rather than just cutting cost baseline, which is important. Um, to that note, when we're talking about what we can do with it, how many humans we can keep in the loop, and how do we enable work towards others, it reminds me of something that I spotted a couple of months ago, something called OpenWealth Association. Can you tell us a little bit more what it is and what challenges it's trying to solve?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah. So Open Wealth originated out of the need from the market, and maybe I make an example. In Switzerland, the wealth management way of operating is getting disintermediated. So a lot of the assets are actually not managed by the custody and private banks themselves, but there's a whole segment of family office, multi-family office, and external asset managers, as we call them, that are parties that are aggregating assets across multiple custodians. And that's a very established practice in Switzerland. I mean, we're talking here about 20 to 30% market share of the whole asset management. So that's substantial. Now think of this, right? If each external asset managers has relationships to 20, 30 custody banks, I mean, to do the aggregation, you have to get feeds from 20 to 30 custodians, and they're all in specific and bespoke formats, right? So the inefficiency that this creates, right, times the number of players in the market, is crazy. And so this was really the starting point to say, hey, let's standardize, right? You know, let's create a standard that everybody can adhere to. Think of it almost like a USB-C that you have now on your mobile phone, and every mobile phone provider is adhering to this, right? So you design once, and it works for every mobile phone or every custodian in that context. So 5 years ago, we inaugurated this, and we created an association, which is not for profit, because we didn't want to have a commercial angle towards a standard. A standard needs to be free, needs to be open, needs to be able to be used by anyone. Otherwise, it will not work, right? Otherwise, you're back to the commercial frameworks which exist as well. I mean, there's fixed and Swift and other standards as well. And well, open banking per se is not new, right? In Europe we had that for the PSD1, PSD2, but for wealth there was not really anything, right? So our companies, took the opportunity and founded the association. In the meantime, we have already 13 custody banks that are members and have onboarded and have started to implement those APIs, right? And they're all standardized according to the standard of the OpenWealth Association. We started to roll it out to APAC, Singapore and Hong Kong, because we have two wealth centers there as well. And broadly, what it does is it has three pillars. Open wealth. One is it defines the exchange of custody positions. Obviously, portfolio exchange. Second one, the second pillar is the transaction support. So you can actually send transactions to the bank and receive acknowledgements and settlements. And thirdly, it actually also empowers the onboarding, the whole client lifecycle management. And that's so key for the industry to harmonize, because we can also see this now in Asia that this external asset manager trend is coming. There's the growth of family offices is huge. Singapore alone has had 50% growth in this market. And I think it's also crucial for coming back to the topic of AI, right? You need data and structured data in order to aggregate going forward, portfolios in future wealth use cases. So I think this is a really great concept that we are pushing globally. We've also signed a memorandum of understanding with Saudi Arabia. So of all places, they're also interested. So at the moment, I think it's just a great momentum, and we want to keep pushing.
That was going to be my follow-on question: is where next after APAC? I think after Saudi Arabia, Middle East, you have hit all the major wealth centers. But I love how you were describing how the concept started. Is there's lack of standards. I love that you guys made this a nonprofit, because I'm a big believer in standardization. I'm a big believer in sharing of knowledge.
Absolutely.
And making it in a model that everyone can onboard and leverage can make the ecosystem that much better and stronger. So amazing. Love all of that. Tell me a little bit more in general, when we think about where technology is playing, when there are different players that's in the ecosystem right now, and people adopting technology in a different pace, if you will, how does that impact what you guys do from the perspective of consulting with clients, from the perspective of delivering different services to clients and helping them become more digital, more future forward looking? How would you envision 2026 to look like in what you guys do and how you deliver services?
So maybe I can reframe the question slightly. Maybe how does AI impact a consultant? Because AI is in everybody's mind, right? And actually, the question I get a lot is, is this the death of a junior consultant, right? Will you not hire any more junior talents fresh from university? But we have to be, right. Because if slide work and everything, analysis work is being done by prompting, then why would you need a more junior person, right? But I would like to sort of recalibrate this, and I actually think that junior consultants are uniquely positioned to be supercharged by the AI movement. And so the question to ask is, what skill do you need to have in order to thrive in an AI, enabled world, right? What does that mean? And we're talking around, being resilient, being creative, asking the right questions, being curious, right, and having empathy and having the interpersonal skills, and I tend to compare it sometimes when I get these questions back to when the internet age came around the 2000s, right? So all the information got proliferated, and at the time, right, the knowledge really got democratized, and it was at your fingertips. So as a consultant, what I always used to say when I was a manager, I'm like, guys, we cannot produce secondary research anymore, right? We have to, as a consultant, we have to create insights. We have to create primary knowledge. That means we have to create analysis on a particular problem. We have to create that knowledge because everything else the client can just Google themselves, right? Well, now we're in the AI age, and I believe we're at another sort of crossroad of, it's going to divide us, right? And especially consultancy. So I think now it's going to become, because the models are smart now, right? So it's not just knowledge, it's also intelligence that comes in. It's analysis. It's very, very powerful. But I think the client interface, the emotional side, the reading of a client conversation and seeing whether the client is stressed or not and what bothers him, and being able to react to that, I think that client interface function is becoming more and more important, right? Also, and especially for a junior consultant. So if you master all of those attributes, you're actually set for a fantastic future, because you can augment yourself with all superpowers. Yeah, and especially, I think the biggest problem we will have across the industries are people that are not able to adapt, and are becoming too blindsided, right? And are not working on themselves. I think that's where I'd be worried. Yeah.
I do agree very strongly. I remember a good friend of mine last year, he made a statement when my book came out, and he said those that will thrive in the future are not those that can roll out AI capabilities the fastest, but those who can actually use the tool to create something, to augment themselves, and to your point, to augment yourself with superpower, right? And I think that's where the future would be. I spent the last few weeks building a digital me, so I got a new tech stack.
Wow.
It was so much fun. I loaded the Quen, the AI model, so I
Mhm.
ran it locally. I uploaded my books, the PDFs that I have. I uploaded the transcripts of all of the podcast episodes that I have, and so I've been training it just to basically see if there is a way that I can infuse everything I've written and talked about for the last decade into this little digital me, and perhaps use it to query and use it to say, well, now we have this particular market development. What would Theo think about this? And this was super fun. Like
Okay.
it's amazing. I'm trying to figure out, okay, so what's next? I might build the UI with that, but it's a little bit overwhelming too. If you think about it, how much you can create and so much faster. Because I came from a world where we had to write code by line. It's like line by line. I started with Pascal. This is
Wow.
dating myself.
Wow.
Yes, this was back in. Let's just say when I first started with computer, it was running Unix and Windows 3.1. That's how old it is. And to this world that we are in right now, that to your point, we can prompt PowerPoint. You can vibe code with Claude Code. You can do a lot of things. It's is scary as it is exciting. And so I think there's a lot that we can do with the tech that we have to change how we deliver services. And to your point, personal skills, curiosity, knowing how to read people across from you, and then to react to it. All of those are important human attributes that, it will be important and even more important. Now, on the other side of the table, I want to ask you if you have a contrarian take, because we can all keep sitting here and talk about how great and how exciting and how wonderful the future could be when AI transform a lot of things that we do. What would be some of your concerns, or what would be some of the views that you have about leveraging AI in our ecosystem that you think your colleagues might not completely agree with? Or
Okay.
fun take?
Let's be bold.
Okay. It's a new year. Let's be bold.
Yeah. Well, I think at the core, And we hinted to this before, right? I think at the core, wealth management is deeply emotional and it is not computational, right? And of course, that goes against the belief of the broad tech community, right? That believe, we can, any client interaction can be automated. But I really believe it's going to stay profoundly human, at least on the top end, and it has to be. And I think the fact to be there for your client, and one thing that I observe in AI can be very self-serving. Maybe coming back to your avatar, and I'd be lovely to try it out because AI tells you also a little bit what you want to hear. It aligns to you, right? And it's also so addictive, right? If you use it, first of all, it has all this nice syntax, and it talks to you, and it actually aligns towards you. And you can even test this, right? The same model with a long enough context windows with you talking to it, it will align to your views, right? And I think um, that's not for wealth management. That's not ideal, right? In money management situation. Here you have to do the tough calls, right? Especially during stormy times when you have market downturns, or we see clients that are faced with margin calls, so they have to put in money or close the position. I mean, you don't need an AI that aligns to you, right? You don't need to have a self-fulfilling prophecy. You need somebody who really can be very directional. And I, and I think that has to be still human at this point in time, as long as we have the trust, trust as a product of financial services, right? So I think at the top end, we should not market AI towards clients, because that will just create, maybe doubts and uneasiness, actually, because it doesn't differentiate, right? I think the most successful wealth managers of the future will be not the one that has the smartest AI, but the one that adopts AI into their operating model responsibly, right? And then works a lot on business agility and culture. I think that's where the success recipe is.
I love that.
Enough? I
And
don't
no,
know.
no, I think it's perfect because I see and hear a lot, at least from the banking side here, that companies try to extend the tool on the front end, the AI front end,
Yeah.
to people. You are the first one that I can remember talking to that said, wait a minute, things that we do, when you need to make the tough calls, you really don't want the client to be talking to a bot that agrees with everything that you say. Because from an intention perspective, these tools, they are designed to agree with you because they want engagement,
They
right?
want
They want
exactly,
you to stay with them. So
and it works well, right?
and it yes, it works really well.
No,
Uh,
the other thing that's missing is the accountability problem, right? AI is very good at answers, but is very terrible at being accountable. I mean, and also how could it be, right? I mean, being responsible for outcomes and governance. I mean, outside of, let's say, an immediate feedback loop, which it does, right? But and for me, that's a big dilemma that we still have to solve, right? Where does the consequence come in, and how does it then adapt? And then the other thing, which I find very interesting in this space, is the cultural element of AI. I'm not sure if you heard of the trolley problem. I-
from
so
an
so
insurance perspective, mostly, but yes.
So it's basically, the train that forks, right? And then you have an elderly person on the track on one side, and I think the original example was like five young boys, and you have to make that decision on that fork, right? So who you're going to run over, right? And what was discovered is that the decision is actually not the same. It's very culturally flavored, right? So in certain Asian cultures, the grandma survives. which is for Western people is astonishing, right? But exactly that shows you, and it's a dilemma not just now for self-driving cars, but it goes all the way up to also decision making, wealth management eventually, right? So yeah,
Yes,
I think we have a
that
lot
is a
ahead of us still in this space. It's very exciting.
it is very exciting, but you brought up yet another good point. It is there are so many things that we don't think enough about. Part of me also worry because a lot of the development has been so focused with one aspect of the view created by a very singular group of technologists that
Mm.
they don't have the worldview nor appreciation on how different ecosystems and different cultures might perceive things. And I love that you're able to bring that aspect to it. I think it's incredibly important. Um, Another way to say thank you so much for um, our chat today. I think is it's amazing and wonderful and insightful, and we need more. I'm a huge believer on bringing different voices and different perspectives into the work we do. That's how we learn from each other and become better.
Exactly.
So
Well, thank you so much for your time and having me and giving me the space to express. So that's great. Thank you so much.
yeah, thank you so much for spending time with me. And I know it's evening time where you are, so appreciate it. And I look forward to actually meeting you in person next time when I'm in APAC.
Please hit
And
me up. Singapore, Hong Kong, it's
I will
possible.
do that sooner than you think, actually. And for the rest of our listeners, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of One Vision. Talk to you next week.